Welcome to the Underhive Workshop. I am Goblin King. Today we are looking at an urban Warzone build focusing on a straight 3-story tall wall segment with a roll-up style warehouse door. This piece is designed to expand on the 2-story ruined corner that we made several weeks ago. Using pieces like this together in a modular build can either allow you to create a very large building front or create a large interior battle space. While I'm moving forward with kind of a city fight post-apocalyptic 40K perspective to the way that I build a lot of this stuff could also come down into like a game set in the Star Wars universe or a game set in pretty much any other science fiction setting that you picture. Building modular buildings like this, building large modular building pieces like this kind of allows you to use them as building blocks to make these just massive, epic interior battle spaces or storytelling spaces. Before we jump into the build, are you looking to connect with us? Join us over on Jimdark Gaming's Discord server. We're building a community around Warhammer 40K, Age of Sigmar, Warhammer Fantasy Battle, and other miniature and tabletop role-playing games, as well as world building and creative writing in both fantasy and science fiction universes. For this build, we are going to start off with a 12-inch by 6-inch foam core base and then build up a wall that provides somewhere between 9 to 10 inches of cover. While this wall will be 3 stories in height, it will only have 2 true floors inside that can be interacted with. That'll be the base floor and the second floor. The main feature of this build will be a roll-up style warehouse door wide enough to allow a land raider to pass through it. As far as tools we'll need today, we'll need our square, a utility knife, a hobby knife, that easy angle cutter, a couple of writing implements. Sanding stick is always helpful. Those templates that we made in the 2-story ruined corner build, a hot glue gun, and spray adhesive. I'll also need a land raider to check for size. The materials we will use in this build are foam core. I'm using Gator board, a big piece of granny grating, 4 pieces of 1/4 inch by 1/4 inch balsa wood sticks, something that is a round cylinder. I have these old cash register tape rolls that I collected for a couple of years, so I'll be using those as the core for my roll-up door. But you can use pretty much anything if you've got a short tube or if you picked up some of the tubes that I had posted a link to earlier. I'll definitely try to find links to everything like normal. Popsicle sticks, and then a piece of this one-sided corrugate. So the reason that I'm going with these cash register rolls is, as you can see, if I put 2 of them together, it's just about as wide as the widest point of the Land Raider. But the main thing that this is going to help with is it's going to give the stability to the roll-up door. When we glue these in place and then we roll this up, we're going to get a nice stable platform that the roll-up style door hangs on. And if you've seen any of these roll-up doors, warehouse storage roll-up doors, it pretty much just is a big piece of corrugated tin or corrugated aluminum that's rolled up. So that's what we're going for here. For our cut list, we will need 1 12-inch by 6-inch piece of foam core for our base. Then we will need a 9-inch by 10-inch wall. We're going to cut it 10 inches wide just because we're not 100% sure how wide it's going for. We're going for an approximate 9 inches roughly of cover. We're going to make it 9 inches tall because we're going to have 3 floors in it, each floor being 2 3/4 or 2 7/8 tall. However, we won't be doing a middle floor. We'll only be doing, we'll be basically doing a double height base floor with a gantry or a second floor above. Then we will need 2 10-inch by 5-inch pieces to act as the roof and that second floor. The other reason that we're going to keep the main floor 6 inches tall is because a land raider is about 4 inches tall. It's a little over 4 inches tall. Obviously, with all the spikes and everything on it, it's going to be taller. But large automatons, like this Forge World Mechanicus guy, is just under 6 inches. So the idea being that one of these could pass through that door, might have to duck or whatever, but it's obviously going to pass through that door. This door is going to be large enough that it's going to allow large tank-like vehicles through. It's going to allow medium-sized walking robots through, but it's going to block something like an Imperial Knight or a Warhound Titan. Time to measure, mark out, and do all of our primary cuts. All right, so we have the facade cut out. I've got a couple of detail pieces that will go on the outside when I'm ready to do it. But before I move to that step, what I want to do is I want to create something that holds this up, that holds my rollers in place. Just to go ahead and check everything too. We've got a land raider, fits nice and tight in there. We've got a large walking robot, also able to move in and out. Armiger should be able to do it. Any medium-sized mecha in any other game should be able to move in and out. If you were playing Space Station Zero, or if you were playing Zone Raiders, any of those medium-sized walkers should be able to fit through pretty well. I laid out a bunch of construction lines. I tried to give you guys an idea of all the dimensions I was cutting. I have an 1.25 inch wide door by 2.5 inch tall. I've got essentially a 5 7/8 tall by 6 inch wide pass through. Then I've got a little area marked out on the top where that floor will go in. Laid out my windows 7/8 of an inch off where that floor will be. Went ahead and put them where I wanted them. I actually had wanted to damage this window, not this window, but this window broke off as I was cutting it. So Bob Ross it, just go with the flow, make that the area of impact. That's the window that got super damaged. This one made it through all right. But yeah, I'm going to go ahead and build that structure for inside, and then I'm going to go ahead and apply this to the base and start assembling everything as we've done in the past. We'll go ahead and use spray adhesive to apply granny grading to the 3x3 piece as well as one of the floors. So that'll be this 10x5 floor, and then also the base. So I'll run through all of those steps here next. Again, spray adhesive will go down, put down a piece of paper, spray the back side, then we're going to apply the piece of granny grading down here. All right, we'll probably go edge to edge and then just damage up the sides to kind of give it a non-edge to edge look, because we don't want to go for that. So that'll be for the base piece. Then the second floor, we'll go ahead and figure out about what it's going to look like. Go ahead and shave down and damage it. And then again, we'll apply a piece of granny grading to it with spray adhesive. And then the roof, no spray adhesive. We'll just cover the roof with glue when we get to that stage and sprinkle the entire top with sand to give it that gravel roof look once more, to match with that other 2-story top that we already made. One of the reasons cutting mats are so nice is we can really quickly look at these and see that they are 1 inch diameter, or just a little bit under an inch diameter. These are probably 3/4 inch diameter based on that. So I will cut a couple of 1 inch squares so I can assemble essentially an open-sided or a shallow 1 inch cube, and that'll be what these will connect to. And then I will glue that to the inside. But before I do that, I'm going to go ahead and glue these guys together. You may have lucked out and you might not be using these. You might have something that's the right thickness already, but a little bit longer. In that case, you won't need to worry about gluing these together. But I'm just going to glue both of these little register tape rolls together. Make sure that they're good to go. I'll lay them out and figure out about how long they are. So they're a little over 6 inches, which is perfect. My doorway is 6 inches, and I want this to be nested inside that doorway. So I'm going to move to my piece of corrugate. Get an exact measurement here. We are at 6 1/4 inches long. So we'll flip this stuff over onto its back, and we will measure out 6 1/4. All right, now we got our 6 1/4 long piece. It's going to be part of this roll-up door, so we'll go ahead and apply a little bit of glue to the top. Press it down nice and tight, making sure we're straight because we are going to roll it up. And then we will do about 3 or 4 revolutions, not that many. Unless you're going to put the door all the way down, which you can do. We're not. We're going to put it up. You don't necessarily have to have that much rolled up. if it's going to be on the outside, or if you're worried about the edges being exposed, or you want to put like a dowel or something through it and hang it, you could obviously do a little bit more. But then once that's done, we just flip it over, figure out about how low we're going to want it to hang. I'm going to want it to hang a little less than an inch. So we'll go with right about here, right about this guy. And then you can decide. You can leave it ragged and raw like that, or you can put a little bit of chipboard on it. We're going to put a little bit of chipboard on it. And to make our life as easy as possible, I'm going to go to this bin that I've been keeping full of all of the scraps from this tutorial series. I'm just going to get a piece of chipboard that's about long enough. I'm going to check it against and make a little mark so I know how long it is. And then I'm going to use my Midwest cutter to go ahead and cut it quickly. Go ahead and glue it in place. Now I didn't with this one, but if you wanted to, you could glue another one on the inside just to pop that detail a little bit more if you wanted to. This is going to be pretty close to that top, so I'm not going to worry about it. The other thing that you could do, a lot of these were driven by chains, so there we go. If you wanted to, you could glue another one on the inside. This isn't exactly the straightest, but it should work for our purposes. I'm going to hang mine on the inside, so I'm not going to worry about creating any. So that's the majority of building these roll-up doors. Really, really simple. This corrugate is doing a lot of work for you, and then you're just putting a little bit of excess detail on it. It's a little piece that really pops a lot of detail. Now I'm going to go ahead and frame out what's going to hold it on the inside of the facade. Oh, we'll be back. All right, with that framed out, we're going to go ahead and attach it to the inside. And we're going to put it just below or just where that floor would be. And the reason we're going to do that is because we want a little bit of that detail to come through on the front. And we can even put a little tiny bead of glue on this little detail piece of flashing on the outside or the inside, so we can go ahead and set it in place. Now it does overall cut into some of the height that you have available for the build, but again, any of these large robots should realistically be able to duck or stoop below it. Well, you still have a space that this guy could move through in-game, or an armiger could move through in-game. And of course, it more than clears our Land Raider, so we could get those sexy, sexy action pictures if we wanted to. There's the outside facade. Just to give it a little bit more detail, a little bit more definition, we are going to go ahead and attach these guys on the outside to frame that doorway. Not only will that give it a little bit more visual interest, but it'll also give it a little bit more surface area to glue on when we get to that stage. And then that top looks a little bare, so I'm going to find another piece of scrap from my little scrap bin here. Another little piece of chipboard. Those little pieces of chipboard that I already cut, I could even look at framing in this doorway or doing something to this doorway. And I did cut 3 of these exterior detail pieces. I didn't cut 3 of them thinking that I would frame the door with it, but we'll go ahead and check and see if it looks good. Does kind of give it an interesting, cool look, so we'll go ahead and do that. We're going to need to break off some of it, though, damage it up a little bit. Add a little bit more of that support back in, just where it actually would have been blown off or crushed or torn apart. There we go. Our facade's a little bit more interesting, a little bit more detailed. So we'll go ahead and glue this to the base. Again, I'm going to lay it on the base, and I'm going to use my pen to trace out the area that I'm actually going to need to put glue in. That way I'm not wasting a bunch of glue or getting a bunch of glue on the base that I have to remove later. Then I'll go ahead and apply that first layer of granny grading, cutting it down to size to make sure that it's the shape and the look that I want it to be. All right, so in this case, there's not really that much that I'm going to need to mark out, so I'm just going to apply the glue to the base like this and line it up as I glue it down. All right, so in this case, I'm actually going to want it to butt up and go outside. So I'm going to mark an area that I'm going to cut into or cut around. I'm going to notch out just one of these squares on each side, and then I'm going to do a test fit. Always be willing to eyeball, measure, cut, test, go back to the beginning over and over and over again to kind of try to make sure you get exactly what you would like. So that notch will stick into the doorway. It sticks into the doorway real nice. Show you guys that real quick. So that notch goes up forward into the doorway. So with that done, I'm going to basically really quickly trace in where I want it to go and how I want the damage to work. Check it as a rough shape again. All right, it's got the coverage that I want and notches forward into that doorway. So I'll damage it a little bit on the edges, and then I will flip it over, put it onto a piece of paper, apply spray adhesive to the back, again wearing a respirator or something to protect my mouth and nose, and then I will go ahead and apply it in place using the spray adhesive again, just because granny grading is kind of notoriously difficult to glue any other way. All right, so with gluing this in place, we made sure to glue it just below we're going to glue in the floor. That way we don't have it necessarily competing with itself or blocking itself. We don't have to cut out a notch or anything. It also gives us a nice stable position to glue to, since we don't have a corner that we're going to do with. We've got like kind of a built-in support. However, this floor is way too freaking big based on the damage that's already there. So we're going to trace out the edge, mark out the edges that we have, and then build in some damage to this upper floor. A little bit of interest, a little bit of damage. Make sure that it's a good fit. It is a good fit. So we'll go ahead and apply its granny grading. Now what we're going to do is we're going to come out from where the wall is, and we're going to add supports for the ceiling. So we're going to come out to here and add one support. This is a balsa wood stick that I cut down to 9 inches. Mark that second spot. Again, this guy's already been cut down to 9 inches. All right, so originally I wanted to show you guys how to make some stairs and then link the stairs to a platform that kind of went, one set of stairs to a 3 inch by 3 inch platform that some guys could stand on, and then another set of stairs that went to the second floor up here. And the problem is I forgot to take into account a couple of things when I was building this. One, my plan was to make this a 12-inch by 6-inch base, so basically to extend that corner piece and basically give a little bit more room to either a facade if you wanted to do a long facade, or if you wanted to do the exterior portions of the building. I never really intended this build to feature multiple different levels and all of that. It had just been something that I had kind of thought that I would throw in on the side because I thought I knew how I was going to do it. And the way that I was going to do it was I was going to place that middle platform here in the center of the roll-up door. The problem with that is, one, it doesn't make a lot of sense, and two, if you did want to actually position a vehicle or position an armature or something in this opening, or a large robot in this opening, you can't do that anymore because there's now a bunch of supports and stairs and a bunch of gunk essentially in the way. And that's not the intention for this. So I wanted to lay out what I did for the steps just because I cut the entire chunk out of the video. And it's pretty easy, or it's a pretty tedious and time-consuming process. But basically, you lay out two 45-degree angle cuts that are about 3 inches in height, because that's the gap that we need to bridge to get to the second floor or to the platform. And then you mark out your popsicle sticks at an 1/8 of an inch up, and you put steps at every 1/8 of an inch. And the reason you do that is because when you take some models in and you want to position them on the steps, they just slide right on in, and they're not going to fall out. And obviously, they're going to fall out if I turn it sideways, but they're not going to fall out if they're standing straight up and down. And that way you can keep unit cohesion with something like a set of stairs or a set of stairs that bend. It doesn't fit in this build. It does have a place in future builds, and I am planning on doing a 12-inch by 12-inch, a foot by foot interior segment. And in the interior segment of, it would be part of this module build. It would be part of something that could be used on this style table. And in that case, there would be the need to have some steps that led to some mid platforms and stuff like that. Now, it doesn't mean that this floor isn't usable in a game. You could still get up here. You would just have to decide with your opponent whether or not, because it's 6 inches up, if you're moving from here to here, or if it's consuming, all 6 inches of movement, or whether or not there was an elevator or something that could be accessed. Or it could just be this can be accessed, but it can't be accessed from this part of the build. It has to be accessed from a different point or a different position on the board. So there's a lot of different ways that you can explain why there's a higher up second floor that can't be just reached, or it could just be set dressing depending on the game you're playing. And again, I had kind of wanted to give you guys a way to get a platform into this build, but based on the fact that this is more of a modular exterior building part, it's not an interior building part. It's not necessarily built. There's not necessarily enough room in this portion of the build to get to that second floor. What could very easily happen, though, is if you've got a 6-inch piece, a 6-inch by 6-inch piece, you could lay it out next to it. You could specifically have a stairwell in it or something like that. And that's definitely something that I will do as a future build on this modular set. So it kind of all makes sense at the end. But I did go ahead and cut it from this tutorial just because it didn't fit, and I was having a hard time trying to justify where it would go, and I just decided that it was I was spinning my wheels in the mud, so to speak. So now that we've got our supports in, and we've got our second floor in, we've got our first floor in, we're going to put our roof on. Unlike last time, we are going to have the roof on top of the build rather than inset a little bit. And because of that, we're going to want to do a bit of an overhang. So this is the underside of the roof, and I'm going to come in 1/8 and just mark it because I want it to be 1/8 of an inch off. And you could still put this right next to the second floor corner if you wanted to. The entire point of this is that it looks similar enough and the bases are the same, so you could modularly connect them. But we're doing something a little bit different with the roof, just so if you are using it in a different point on the table, or you're using it in a different build, or maybe you're even using it as part of a different module, you definitely have a little bit more freedom. So once that's in place, we're just going to position it and make sure that it fits with where we want to go. And then we are going to put in the key for where our damage is. But we're going to keep in mind where those interior supports are. So to kind of mimic what I did on the floor below it, I'm going to come out to that support and make sure that I'm using it, but then I'm going to put a big hole kind of in the middle of this roof. Put our bead right down there. I'm going to pull these out just a little bit. Put a little bead on top. Press them in so they line up where they're supposed to be. And there we have it. We've got our supports that go up to the roof. We've got the roof. We've got our second floor, our first floor, and now it just comes down to doing rubble and basing. So the first little bit of rubble we're going to do with tacky glue. We're going to do almost all of our rubble with tacky glue. So I am going to do a couple of big rubble piles. And I'm actually going to start out with some of this big material, these big chunks of material that I have left over, and I'm just going to kind of build up in the center. Not really super worried about what the detail part looks like, because I'm essentially just trying to make a mountain. As I add the coral on top, as I add littler pieces and stuff on top, it'll start to define a little bit more. But this way I get kind of more rubble. I get more bang for my buck. I'm already building up a nice little pile. Mix in pieces like the balsa wood, basically any little extra pieces that got cut out of this build. Some of the granny grading can be used, making a mess. And then when that's all laid out that way, has its basic layout done, I'll spread out the rest of the glue, and I will apply the smaller pieces of gator board or foam core, depending on whether or not you're using gator board like I am, or if you have foam core. But all these little tiny pieces that I keep chopping up and throwing in this jar, I'll spread on top so I get some even finer rubble. And I'll let it sit for just a couple of seconds. I'll press some extra stuff in, but I'll really just sort of let it sit for a couple of seconds, and then I'll shake off, and whatever falls off, falls off. And then I'll make another rubble pile. And we'll put a rubble pile over here in this little empty space. Now again, PVA glue, normal white Elmer's. I'm going to make a pretty big pile, pretty big mess of it. And then I'm just going to take all of this junk, all these junk pieces, this cast off little tiny cuts that I made while doing this build, and I'm going to start putting them in there. Some of these popsicle stick pieces from the failed first or second staircase that I put together. I could even use the failed staircase if I wanted to. I could put it on the ground as part of the rubble. I'm going to kind of move and build this pile towards this pillar. Specifically building up some bulk, giving it kind of a little bit of a mountain in appearance with just the junk that's there. And then again, as it gets kind of close to full or close to fuller, I'll put some more PVA glue down, spread it a little bit with my paintbrush. Then I'll take this stuff that I've been chopping up and I'll sprinkle it on top. Just really coat it. Let it sit for a couple of seconds. Knock off the excess. Anything that falls off, falls off. And then I will collect all of these little excess pieces and put them back in my jar. You guys have definitely seen me several times in the past take all of this irregular pieces and chop them down on screen, but even off screen I collect them into a larger Tupperware, and then when I've got some time I'll take a large butcher knife, pick up something from a thrift store or a tool like this guy here, and I'll just chop the pieces into smaller, kind of more manageable little pieces of debris. Put them all in the jar. And now when you're basing a miniature, when you're basing something with a lot of detail, you're going to use something like sand or crushed coral or whatever, because you're looking for kind of fine little tiny pieces. But when you're basing something like ruins or terrain or large pieces, you want really big chunks every once in a while. And that's what chopping this stuff up does, is chopping this stuff up gives you all those little chunks. Kind of make it as irregular as you can. Some of the stuff that you tear or use on your hands work as well. Sometimes these little pieces of even wood can work, or little pieces of granny grating or any other material. Just anything little can kind of all get tossed into a jar or something like this and then put to the side and mixed up. And then any of this bigger stuff, just move it to the side. Put it into another bin, whether or not it's a bin that you pull for future pieces or whether or not it's a bin that you just use to chop up larger pieces of debris later. All right, so after having let that sit for a couple of minutes, I'm going to go ahead and start applying all of the other stuff that I want to as far as basing stuff goes. So like I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and coat the top in sand. There we go. I've got my corporate gravel rooftop look going on. So now on the inside, let's see if I can't get a good angle on that. I'm going to spread a little bit more glue around, and I'm going to put in my crushed coral and debris, heavy debris mix. My heavy debris mix has some of these pieces of foam core. It's got some little pieces of cork. It's got some pieces of all sorts of stuff. I think there's even a couple of little chunks of XPS foam in there. It's just a good dirty mix of little bits and bobs and extras all kind of together, but the majority of it is crushed coral. I'm also going to put some debris up into these corners. A little hard to see because it's not like the camera can kind of go through floors here, but I'm going to mix into those corners as well. Not going to be afraid to get some of it outside. I'm also going to mix it into this middle area. Get it kind of all over. And just take some handfuls of this stuff and throw it on. Just a couple of seconds and shake it off, and then I'm going to hit it again. Sometimes some of the glue is covered up by larger pieces that fall off, or stuff just doesn't stick in all of the nooks and crannies. There we go. Quite a bit down on the base floor. It looks like this area is a little bit lacking, so I'm going to hit it. Again, paying attention to that corner where the wall and the door are, areas that debris would fall. You know, if it's blown by a missile or a grenade or something, it's going to hit little areas like that and stick. It's all about guessing or trying to figure out how things break in a lot of ways. There we go. I'm much happier with that. Now this second floor needs the same treatment. And normally I would only do crushed coral. But being that this very much has kind of a missile impact, explosion or something look to it, I'm actually going to use this heavier, denser stuff up here first. So I'm going to paint it into that corner. I'm basically just going to get a bunch of glue into that corner and all over. Spread it out kind of randomly where I want or where I think the most debris should be. A lot of it really is random though. It's kind of want it in here. I'm not going to be precise. I'm going to be as messy as hell. You know, instead of dragging a nice long fine bead with my paintbrush, I'm just going to jab it in there and kind of mix it all around. I'm not doing anything fancy. I'm very much swirling it and pulling it and pushing it and all that. It just gets a nice mess. And then same thing, just handfuls of this stuff right on in there. And what's going to happen as I pour it this way is a lot of the crushed coral is going to end up on the outside, and a lot of the large debris stuff is going to end up moving to the inside, which is what I want. There we have it, a 3-story warehouse roller door style entryway. Needs to dry before we apply any paint, but again, the first step for paint I would do would be to mix some Mod Podge with maybe some gray or some black or even maybe some ink, and then go ahead and give the whole thing a coat before I painted it. Big things I wanted to make sure that I maintained with this. Obviously, I want squads of guys to be able to stand up here on the roof. See if we can't find our Arbites squad of 4. Well, that's 4 guys on 28mm bases on the roof. Obviously, they're also going to be able to stand there on that second floor relatively easily. Probably get an entire squad of guys on that second floor, if not 2 squads of guys. If you're running 20 guys, maybe they all get there. If you're doing independent role-playing game or something where you've only got 4 or 5 guys, there's obviously more than enough room. But for those long epic or large epic games, we want to be able to get those vehicles right on in there. And it definitely fits all the way. Can drive right on through and be positioned where you want it to. Obviously, it can fit through these areas as well. Sponsons can't necessarily fit, but I know. Just talk to whoever you're playing against if they're going to be super hard on those rules. And then, of course, our large robots or larger robots also have no problem fitting. His cannon's a little bit tall, but, again, this roller door would either be further up or it'd be something that could be bashed aside or even ducked under or something like that. If you like these tutorials or found any of this information helpful, leave us a like and consider subscribing. We are trying to release a few terrain tutorials a month, and I will be back in the future with tutorials that focus on painting some of the pieces I've built here on various episodes of the Underhive Workshop. Have a build you want to see? Please let us know down there in the comments. Need something to listen to while having a paint jam or a big hobby sesh? Check out our podcast, Under the Hive of Madness. We are on Spotify, Apple, Google, and many, many more. If you would like to support us and help our show grow, you can do so through Patreon, and that's patreon.com/underthehiveofmadness. We're looking to do a couple of things here for the Underhive Workshop, like get a different camera that's not quite as close to the work surface. We've already upgraded the microphone down here and done the first round of soundproofing, which is bringing a little bit better audio quality to the show. But we're always looking to expand and basically give more angles and better visuals to you guys as I go through these tutorials. As always, I've put all of the various spellings and all the various links down below in the notes to the episode. Thank you very much for joining me on this build. If we keep working on this stuff together, we'll make something truly awesome.